Well, thank you all for joining us today. We're going to start off with introductions, and I will start off with myself, John Bly. I'm with the Engineering Contractors Association, and been on this committee now for 10 or 12 years. It's been a while, but we'll just go, as I look on my screen, I'll go to Mark Soyland.
Good afternoon, Mark Soyland, Soyland Company. We are aggregate soil and compost and bark producers.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Steve Bertlebaugh.
Yes, Steve Bertlebaugh representing the Sierra Club.
Been here since as long as I've been on this committee, Steve. Thank you for all your help and expertise. And David Oster.
Good afternoon, David Oster. We're representing Susan Gorin's first district, and I've been on for a long time, a couple of years, but all COVID. So it'd be nice to see some of you in person sometime. I miss that.
Yeah, back in the day, we used to meet live. Yeah. So Drew Nichols, I'll have you introduce yourself.
Drew Nichols, clerk of the board for SCTA and RCPA.
And Nancy, I'll go to you just because you're on my screen. I know you're our guest presenter today, but Nancy Adams with Santa Rosa City.
Yeah, so thank you, John. So yeah, I'm here to do our annual CAC presentation for our Measure M project. So we have a few other city staff here, mostly engineers, who are here as my backup support. So glad they're on the call as well. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. And Rick Ludman.
Yeah, I'm in Leonard Park, and I'm the League of Women Voters Sonoma County chapter appointee to this committee.
Well, thank you. Tanya Narath.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya, and I'm the Director of Climate Programs for the RCPA.
And Shauna Goss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Shauna Gause with the Sonoma County Transportation Authority. I am Senior over Programming and Projects.
Great. Dana Turry.
Hi, I'm Dana Turre. I'm a transportation planner with SCTA.
Okay. And Willard Richards.
I represent the Sonoma County Transportation and Land Use Coalition. And I've been on this committee for a couple of decades. I think ever since George Ellman was no longer a member of this committee.
Well, thank you for all your years of service. Appreciate it. And Tom Conlon.
Hi, everybody. Tom Conlon here, Sonoma County Conservation Coalition, and I'm in the Sonoma Valley.
And thank you. And the one, the only, Dennis Harder, who laid all the groundwork for me.
Yeah, thanks. I guess I am the senior member of this fine committee. I'm a representative from the Sonoma County Alliance, and I was here whenever George Ellman was on the committee and we were working together. So anyway, there you go. So have a good seeing everybody via Zoom.
Good seeing you virtually, Dennis. And Chris Barney, SCTA.
Good afternoon, Chris Barney with SCTA. I'm also a transportation planner.
Kathleen.
Kathleen Cortez. I'm with the County Human Services Area Agency on Aging. And just as a reminder, last month I had asked for a backgrounder about this committee and how the membership organizations were selected. And I think you asked 15 minutes, but I didn't see it on the agenda.
I know you did ask for that, and I think we did talk about doing that. I don't know if Drew, if we've got something prepared for that or not. If not, we will make sure we get it next month. So Kathleen, sorry if we overlooked it this month.
Mr. Chair, may I offer
sure.
that this committee's organizer is Ross Clendenin, and he's not at work today. He had to call in sick. So he will probably manage that for us next time.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Shauna. And David Ripperda.
Afternoon, everyone. David Ripperda. I'm Assistant Director of Projects and Programming at SCTA.
Okay. Thank you. Mosa Abasi. You're muted, Mosa.
Okay, it happens
go.
always. Musa Abbasi, Transmedia Consulting Engineers, and I'm representing the Santa Rosa Metro Chamber.
Great. And thank you. And Grant Bailey.
Yes, I'm Grant Bailey, Supervising Engineer with the City of Santa Rosa, here to support Nancy Adams as necessary in her presentation this evening.
Thank you. Orlando Ramirez.
Hi, this is Orlando Ramirez with Caltrans, District 4.
Thank you. And James, I thought you were on vacation. Are you joining us today?
James Cameron, I am joining you with limited cell reception, so no video today. I'm ready for questions on the financials if they come up.
Great, thank you. And Chris.
I think there's two Chris's. I'll assume it's me. It's Chris Cabagan with the City of Santa Rosa, Associate Civil Engineer here to support Nancy.
Yeah, no, I had you on there, Chris, but I didn't know your first name, so my apologies for that. There's another Chris on here.
Hi.
I don't have a last name.
Hi, my name is Chris Balanusi. I'm also with the City of Santa Rosa, here to support Nancy.
Great, thank you. Welcome. Suzanne Smith.
Good afternoon, Suzanne Smith, Executive Director of SCTA and RCPA.
And Eris Weaver.
Hi, Eris Weaver, Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition.
And did I miss anybody as I fumbled around through these small little icons? Hopefully not. So thank you guys for joining us, and we'll go through. Is there any public comment? I don't think I saw any members of the public, but if there's anybody out there that has a public comment to make, please make it. And seeing none, we'll go on to administrative items, and it's the approval of the February 28th meeting minutes. Drew Nichols.
Meeting notes are in the packet. Chair Bly noted that on the committee members, let me just show you that I had left the previous chair on under here, and that also the URL for the presentation from Janice Thompson was not working, so I corrected that, and then I had corrected this. Otherwise, the notes are presented as they are in the agenda packet for your approval.
Okay, and not.
I would like to take a motion to approve the minutes as adjusted, as amended.
I'll second.
Yeah, and just for discussion, do we have Kathleen's request for the background on how committee members are chosen on those minutes?
I'll put them in, but I know they're on the recording.
That's perfect. If you could throw them in there so it's in writing, that way we won't miss it next time, Drew. Appreciate it.
Guaranteed. My apologies on that.
Nope, no problem. Any further comments on those? All those in favor of the minutes as amended, as verbally amended, raise your hand. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. And we are on to Measure M project presentation. Shauna Goss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we do each month, we come to you with a Measure M recipient that is going to give you a presentation about the status of their Measure M projects. This month, it is the City of Santa Rosa. So I'll be turning it over to Nancy Adams, along with Grant Bailey, Chris Catbagan, and Chris Balanusi, I think I heard you say. I hope I did that right. Balanusi.
Balanusi.
Got it. Thank you. So turning it over to you guys for the 4 Measure M projects, please.
Thank you, Shauna. Hey, Drew, can I share my screen? I'm gonna try this.
Yeah, you should be able to, Nancy.
Can everybody see it?
Perfect.
Wow. Okay, look at this. Now I got to get it to the PowerPoint thing. So hold on.
Nancy, while you're doing that, do you want to wait for questions until we're done with all 4 of your subjects here?
Sure. Let me get.
Okay.
Now I got to get myself to the right slide. So let me go back.
You guys think of something, put it on the chat and we'll get to it.
Step to the top. Hold on. Sorry. I'm getting you all dizzy here. All right. So there we go. Good. Okay, we all set?
We are all set,
Let's
Nancy.
roll.
Everything's in order.
Oh, great. Okay, so you guys have a great support for me. So thank you, Shauna and Drew. So as Shauna mentioned, it's Santa Rosa's annual visit with the committee. So we've got a handful of projects that we're going to speak to you about today. You've seen these last year: Hearn, Fulton Road, Farmers Lane Extension, and Santa Rosa Creek. So let's start with Hearn Avenue. So it's kind of our favorite child, right? One of these days we're going to say this thing's been built. So we're not quite there, but we keep on rolling on it. So just a reminder to the committee, this project was divided into 3 phases. Phase 1 was the piece from Santa Rosa Avenue from Yolanda to Baker. And that was a project that was done and completed in 2014. Phase 2 was the segment on Hearn Avenue improvements from Dutton to the 101 freeway. And that was completed in 2010. And you can see the Measure M amounts that were appropriated to those 2 phases. We're in phase 3. That's the Hearn Avenue interchange. And we are optimistic and to try to get this thing built by 2025. So that's the goal. And we've got about 17 million and some change of Measure M into this project phase. So let's talk a little bit more about phase 3. So here's a footprint of the interchange. As you all know, this is our linchpin here at Hearn Avenue. We've got Corby on the left side of the screen, and then we got Santa Rosa Avenue on the right side of the screen. And essentially, this is Chris Catbagan's project. So any engineering questions or project scheduling questions, you can, we may have to call him in as needed. But essentially, it's the same footprint of the interchange that's out there now. The structure's going to be, of course, widened and elevated. It will be demolished and rebuilt, just because we need to get some vertical clearance per standard requirements, and we just need to widen the bridge, right? So other than that, the ramps will pretty much stay in the same footprint that you see on this aerial exhibit. So let's go and talk a little bit more about the actual project. So again, there's a lot on this slide, but you can see here's the structure here. We're going to be widening it from 2 to 4 lanes, and one of the aspects of this is that we're really looking at trying to enhance even more the bike and ped access across the 101 barrier as being such a barrier for that mode of transportation. So we've I think included some design features that we presented to the committee last year, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. There's an inset here in the upper right-hand corner. I'll show a little bit larger slide on that, but essentially, rather than do class 2 bike lanes on both sides of the structure, we are opting to do class 1s on the north side with a multi-use path on the south side for cyclists and pedestrians. It's about 10 feet wide. So, and then the other part of this is that we are, really looking at our emergency response and an evacuation, for this southern half of Santa Rosa. And by widening this structure, will really afford that that response time and emergency response a lot better than it currently does with the 2 lanes across the freeway. And there's in the works a fire station that's going to be built on Hearn Avenue at some point. So that even raises the bar for us to make sure that we try to accommodate our fire department's responsiveness to our community. So let's go to the next slide. This is another one that's got a lot of information on it. And actually these are pulled out of our what is called, and I don't know what the acronym is. Shauna probably does. It's the RAISE grant. I don't know what it all stands for, but it's our federal request that we've been doing for several years, and we're going to do it again this year. So this is just showing, how this project will really help some of our marginalized communities here in Southwest Santa Rosa. At the top, there's an area of persistent poverty and an opportunity zone. And these are things that are identified in our census information and through the USDOT portfolio that helps us to determine what, how this relates to our areas of, more concern and need the transportation investments to help them. And so you can see here, this is an emergency designated response route, Hearn Avenue. There's a handful of schools in the area, and we are connecting to, some of the major retailers with the Santa Rosa Marketplace and the Santa Rosa Town Center, and of course the auto row. So it really gives an overview of just things happening in the area. It also looks at our existing bike network. You can see the smart multi-use path here. And then we've got, this is the alignment of the Farmers Lane extension here on the right. And that will, make a connection for bikes and peds as well, because we're also planning a multi-use path that would align with the Farmers Lane extension. So there's a lot on this slide, but I think it's telling for many reasons. So let's go to, this is a little bit of a more focused view of the multi-use path. And you can see here, it's a 10-foot wide path. And we've got like a 5 to 7 foot little separation there between the travel lane, which is a good thing to have that separation for our cyclists and our pedestrians there on the south side. And we can accommodate that, and Caltrans has been working with us on, the design element of that. And so we're happy to include this as part of the design concept. So let's see, next slide. Oops, get that out of there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit now about the actual phases of the project and where we're at. So we finished the environmental phase straight up. So we're working on the PS&E and the right of way. And these two are, that we're right close to getting these done. And we just, and Chris is on the call. We're just trying to get it to the place where we get this construction phase fully funded. And then I think all the pieces will fall together, and then we can get it ready, complete up the design and the right of way and get it, ready to list for construction. So we're hoping that by the end of this calendar year that those two phases will be buttoned up, and then we can move on to the construction the following 2 years after that. So this is the actual money and by phases. So, and this is again phase 3. So you can see many of the phases have already, environmental is certainly done, and many of the phases have all used development and redevelopment funds as our source of local match. The exception to that is going to be the construction phase, which we are anticipating not only some impact fees from our utility services, but also our gas taxes that we get annually. And it's not the SB1 gas tax. This is the other gas taxes that we receive throughout on an annual basis. So I'll focus on the construction phase, and we can, if you'd like, we can talk a little bit more about the other phases. But the construction phase, we've got $3.4 million, and then we also have the $10 million program that was committed by the board, just reassuring us that once we got, the outside other remaining funding for this project, that we would have, that would be available to us of Measure M money. So that brings our total program amount for the construction phase at $13,450,000. We are ready and able to continue to work, as you see on the footnote, to seek construction funding from not only the RAISE grant, but we're also looking at SCTA did a 2021 funding program call for projects, and we are hoping to get some additional money through that call for projects. We are working with our state and our federal legislators to see if we can, in fact, I'm working right now with a similar kind of request to both our state and federal legislators to see if we can get some money through either of those congressionally designated funding requests for both state and federal. So we keep trying to figure it out. Right now, the total project cost for the construction is about 32 million and some change. So I guess we just keep on pushing forward, and I can say that Shauna and James have been really supportive at the SCTA to try to help us try to figure this out. So I'll go to the next slide, which brings us to Fulton Road. So just a reminder, this is it's a two-phase project. So on the slide, the picture on the right, you'll see phase one up there at the top, and there's two segments of phase one. So from Pioneer Road to Wood Road, that was done many years ago as part of development along that frontage. And the piece that we're working on right now is from Pioneer down to Guerneville Road. So that's the second piece of that phase one. And then there at the very bottom of that image, you'll see phase two, and that's the looking at the potential interchange there at Highway 12 and Fulton Road. So, and then the aerial on the left is just a little closer view of the segment that we're doing right now, which is from Pioneer down to Guerneville. And you'll see that has Pioneer High School and then the Youth Community Park. They have frontage on that segment. So we are working on that. And here's a cross section of it. So I'll just kind of go over some of the highlights. And again, this is another Chris Katvagen project. So if there's questions, we can maybe design question he can maybe answer. But essentially, we're going to have 2 travel lanes in each direction, 6-foot bike lanes. We're going to have a planter strips and a sidewalk on the frontage, and we'll have a 2-way left turn lane, and then there'll be medians where they're where they make sense and they don't prohibit access to residents ingressing and egressing out of onto Fulton Road. And then we're going to be having a hawk, and Shauna asked me to say what that meant, and I'm like, oh, I didn't do that. So it's a high. It's a flasher kind of thing, and it works for our pedestrians, and Chris might know, but I don't know the acronym, so sorry about that. But it's going to be located right a little bit south of the school and there at the youth park, and the reason why that we decided to include that in the design, because there's a lot of pedestrians there with the school and the park, so it made sense to include that in the design. Let's go on to the next one. So now we'll look at the financial part of it. So again, 2 phases. Measure M for phase 1 is 8.7 million, and we are hoping to finish that in 2024. And then phase 2 is the interchange plant, potential interchange there at Highway 12, and that 500,000, it's programmed, and what will probably be the result of that will be some sort of a feasibility study to determine whether or not it makes sense to have that interchange. And so that is yet to be started, but that's a little bit of the backstory on that 500,000. And let's see, go back. I think we'll go on to the next slide because So this is the phase 1. So you can see we are through all the design, environmental and PS&E, that was all completed. And the good news on this one is the construction. We are going to our council on April 26th and to award the contract. So that will mean, probably construction will begin in May of 2022. And that's, again, the piece from Guerneville Road to Piner Road. So real excited that we got that one to the finish line. So let's move on. Now we'll talk a little bit about the financial part of this phase. So again, you can see some similarities here. We use development and impact fees and gas tax predominantly for the first 3 phases of the project. We've matched it, and moving on now to the construction phase. And we have $7 million of Measure M that's programmed, and we will be going to the board, I think, Shauna, in May to have the board authorize an appropriation request for the 7 million so that we can start invoicing on that once we get the contract underway in May. We're going to be bringing to the table about almost $13 million. Somebody was talking about Teslas and how expensive they've gotten. Well, steel and gas and fuel prices have all gone up. So, this project came in and we had to cover a significant shortfall just to get this thing awarded. So what we did was, not only are we dedicating our development and impact fees, I asked the council last year and the prior year to appropriate or to allocate 2 years of our SB1 gas tax to this construction phase. So it's a heavy lift for us, but we had to get it to the finish line, and so I'm happy that now Chris has got this thing close to getting awarded and under construction this year. So now we'll talk about Farmers Lane extension. So here's an aerial that just shows the alignment of this project. And you had the committee had asked to see this a couple of years ago, so we just decided to keep it in the mix. And I guess I'll just say that this project continues to be in our general plan, and it continues to be it is in the Measure M, current Measure M plan. So we are we haven't discounted it yet. I think the important thing to note is that this becomes a pretty important evacuation route, and I say that because the linchpin here is Highway 12 and 101, right? So if we have another route for Lincoln Valley and Sonoma Valley to get out and access down to the freeway, to get out of the county, this is really key, right? So it's becoming, something, I think it's becoming a little bit more than just, that circulation connector that was thought of many years ago for just this area here in Santa Rosa. So let's see. Right now, this is just kind of a reminder, the only Measure M lift that we've done is in the phase one, and that was $437,000. And that was started back in 2003. And this was to acquire right of way. So we've got, here's the environmental, here's the design. These phases were all, the first two phases were all completed using local money. There was no Measure M money in the first two phases. So these would need to be probably refreshed if we, want to start revisiting this project and actually getting it built. Because as you can see, the environmental is a little bit dated, and of course the plans would need to be adjusted. There's one parcel that needs to be acquired. Other than that, there are no other right-of-way requirements necessary for the project. And then of course the construction, we have yet to determine that schedule. So here you can see, here's how this played out in terms of money. You see all the local money and the environmental and the design phases. That was all put in by our local dollars. And then you can see the program $437,000 of Measure M, which we spent for right of way. So let's see. And then we've got just one kind of short note there. We've got about 9 million and some change for yet to be programmed for this project. So yeah, we're as we close out the current Measure M, that's something like, I guess it's still a question on how this is going to shape out. There has been some consideration about actually maybe kind of splitting this project up into two phases and maybe building a phase from Bennett Valley to Kiwanis Springs or Kiwanis Terrace, actually be Kiwanis Springs, as one phase, and then finish it up from Kiwanis Springs to Yolanda as a second phase. So, so we can look at options, and I think that would be something that, that would be part of the conversation moving forward. So let's see, that brings us to, I think we're now at the Creek projects, right? Yes, we are. So the Santa Rosa Creek Trail access, there's 3 phases of that project. And the first phase was done back in 2014, and that was streamside to Mission. That's kind of out here in Rincon Valley area, right behind like I'm trying to get a base mark. So between Mission and there's some apartments that were just built there, but that's just right there. And then between, it's a little bit east of Brush Creek there, because streamside, there's a signal right before you get to Brush Creek. So that's the first phase. And the second phase was, oops, that was me hitting the button wrong. That's the second phase is Dutton Access East, and that's providing a ramp there at Dutton Avenue and the creek, and that was done in 2012. And then the phase 3 is actually the other side. It's Dutton Access West, and again providing an access ramp to Dutton there at the creek. So the first 2 phases are done. One was done in 2014 and the other was in 2012. We're working on phase 3, and this is the other Chris. And I realize I have 2 Chris's now on these Measure M projects. What a coincidence. So we're hoping that this could get done in a couple of years. 2024 is what we're targeting. Creek projects have been, and Shauna knows this, they've been kind of a challenge to build. We have a lot of challenges with the creek, and there's more, it's not as straightforward sometimes with environmental and cultural resources. So those tend to be a little more challenging, and I'd rather be conservative and not overpromise and underdeliver. So we're targeting a 2024 delivery timeframe for this project. So let's see. So here's the pictures of them. So you can see the big image here is this is the Dutton Avenue piece. So this is the one that we're working on. This is the west access side, and then the one, oh Lordy, go back. Sorry about that. And then this one here is the one that we've already done. You can see the ramp there coming up to Dutton. So those two are the east and west side of Dutton. And then over here, this little inset, this is the streamside demission. So what this did was it connected to existing trails. This comes down and connects up to the confluence of Brush Creek at some point. So that is the other phase. So let's go to schedule. Let's see. Okay, so here we are. This is the phase 3 schedule. So we started the environmental, I think in 2018. Sean and I were chatting about this, and we think it's been that long. Like I said, we're hoping to get that done in 2022, and then start up with the design in 2022, 2023. Same for right away, and then roll into the 2024 construction season for the ramp. Sorry. So here's what we've got in terms of financial. So we haven't got. I'll talk a little bit about. We've got we've got programmed 52,000 for environmental, and we've got reimbursement of about 33,000 and some change. So we are we hired an outsourced this design and environmental to a consultant, and they are, they've got the topo complete. They're probably about 30% design, and they're working on the geotechnical and cultural resources and environmental. I think they've obtained a right of entry for the property owner that we need to potentially get some property rights. And the owner is seemingly willing to cooperate with the construction of the project. So that's good news. And they're looking at a couple of options. Chris B can talk if you want to know more about those. But they all predominantly are, they need to be ADA and they need to be adherent to ProRag, which is ADA standards. And then most of them have the 5% maximum grade. So they're looking at a couple options, and they're trying to minimize, some tree removals if they don't have to. So it's good to see that they've made a pretty good, progress on it. And I'm pretty encouraged because this one's gone through a couple of engineers, and I'm glad to see that there's been quite a bit of progress made in the last, since we talked the last time. So that's good. And then we've got, programmed amount yet coming up for construction as well, but we haven't asked the board for any appropriation on those phases yet. Okay, wow, that's the last slide. And so we thought we'd highlight the Hearn Avenue interchange as part of our website. So you can see, if you look at there, you'll see we have all the projects listed. There's Fulton, Hearn, Highway 101, which was a project a long while ago. We got some measure of money for the feasibility study, and that's on there. And then we have our local maintenance project. And of course, we don't have our creek projects. I just realized that. And I think they're on there though. So you can navigate through this. This connects up to our capital improvement map, which shows all of our CIP projects. And once you click on that, you can get more information. But this tells you about the project. It gives you schedule. It gives you financial information. It gives you the project engineer, and it gives you like links, for example, to environmental, or I think there's some plans on some of these as well. So it's a pretty deep dive into the Measure M, and we've really pulled those out of our general CIP web page, but we do recognize these Measure M projects in the CIP web page as well. So we kind of get a double coverage on it, which is, I think, good. So I know I've talked a lot, so I'm gonna pause now and answer any questions. And I haven't even looked at the chat, so I don't know if there's any in the chat or not. But thank you all for an opportunity to share, John, and I will put it back to you as the chair and facilitate the conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. A lot of information there. I'll pop one quick first question, and I don't know if it's to you, Chris, or Gabe, but you had mentioned the volatility of some of these material prices are making it quite difficult for you guys to get your funding in order and so forth and so on. So one of the things that we've been advocating for, Caltrans does it, and we now have the County of Sonoma including it on their contracts for road rehabilitation and repavement work, is an escalator clause that fixes the price of oil. So if the price goes up over 10%, the contractor bid it when it was frozen with the price index for oil, and he or she would be entitled to a price increase at the end of the project. By the same token, if the price of oil goes down from the price index at the time of the bid to when they actually did the asphalt overlay, then the city of Santa Rosa would get a deductive change order. So I just throw that out there because you do have a number of big projects coming up here. Is that something that you guys have talked about internally, or would you welcome a letter from the ECA to consider adding that to your bid packages?
Grant, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. Thanks, Nancy. So that's a good question, and it's a good point. Currently, I think I don't know if you mentioned it, but we did. I think you may have alluded to the fact that we don't abide by the Caltrans clause, which allows for fluctuations in the oil index. But given the market's current volatility, I think it might be a good idea to open that up on some of the larger contracts, especially if we're seeing the volatility, moving forward. Next couple weeks. Something I'll definitely bring up with our management team and see what they're open to.
Who would I send the letter into, Chris, for that to be considered if I was to send one in?
Yeah, that would probably be to Mike Prince, the Deputy Director of Capital Projects.
Yeah, he and I have talked, about it in the abstract. He seemed interested, so I'll follow up on that. So, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, we'll get
Before
to the
we
chat.
Oh, it just happened. Thank you. I was just going to ask that Nancy stop sharing her screen so we could see everybody while we do the questioning. Thank you.
Okay, and I know we see Rick Lutman has his hand up. I have not gone to the chat yet to see what questions are on chat, but let's go to Rick first.
Thank you, Chair Bly. I'd like to have the screen sharing back again because I need to ask about the map of the Santa Rosa Creek.
Nancy, can you bring that back again? Mr. Lutman is asking about the overview of Santa Rosa Creek Trail. Yeah,
sorry about that, Shauna. Let me do that. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know whether I should leave it on if they had a question. So sorry, I apologize if I messed up.
No worries. We had a request to take it down. So if you could just go back to the Santa Rosa Creek Trail.
All right, here we go. What particular slide did the committee member have a question about?
One right there. I need some orientation on that lower right map. I'm not sure where that is.
Oh, okay. Are you familiar with Santa Rosa? So do you know where Highway 12 and Brush Creek and Streamside? Do you know those two traffic signals on Highway 12? Which is right here.
You mean?
Or do you know where Mission Boulevard is?
Yeah.
And Highway 12?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you were going down Mission, and there's a Union Hotel, there's a restaurant right there, a Union Hotel, and there's a Quig. Quig there's a signal there, and there's a little shopping center. So it's right there, the path starts right there and it goes behind and goes all the way down here. So to the it connects up to the existing path. So it's right behind, and they just built some storage units on Highway 12 and the Ace Hardware. So it's like it's the creek is right behind those properties. Does that make? Are you oriented now?
Yeah, at the lower left, that diagonal blue line, what street is that? Or is that is there a street there? What is that?
No, that's not a street. That's another waterway. Yeah.
I see. And on the lower right of
Yeah.
the screen, there's a major street. What is that?
Hold on.
There's names on there, but I can't.
I think it's Montgomery. Isn't
See,
it?
so Mission is up here, right? Right.
And on the lower right, there's a.
And this is Highway 12.
No, the lower right. Lower right.
Lower right.
That one.
Oh.
The lower right.
That's probably
is
Montgomery.
Montgomery.
Montgomery. That's Montgomery. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm worried.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Part of my picture was covered up, so thank you.
Okay, Eris Weaver.
Yeah, hi. I've seen these before, I know, in the past, but Nancy, could you refresh my memory on a couple of things? Two things I have a question on. One, with the Hearn interchange, as long as we're widening that bridge, I'm not remembering why the bike facility is being so much wider on one side and not the other. If we're spending all the effort to make it wider, why not have a nice wide separate one on both sides? And then my second question is, and you may have mentioned it and I missed it because I'm at home and someone else walked in the room and distracted me. On the Fulton project, that looked like there is a median, a wide median, and why could that median not, that width instead be used to buffer the bike lanes rather than having a median in the center of the road?
Nancy, I'll take this. Maybe to answer your first question regarding the Hearn Avenue interchange and why we have a multi-use path on one side and the other doesn't. I think it starts with originally the design didn't have a multi-use path. What it did, it had a widened median, it had a widened sidewalk, and it had just regular bike lanes. I think it was 6 feet. Yeah, at one point, when we were applying to I guess our fourth federal grant, which was the RAISE grant, we already had our design at 100%, and it took a long time to get our design 100%. And with that, it kind of included is locking the footprint of the bridge structure, and so that took roughly 3 years. And so when we said, hey, let's try to get a multi-use path on one side to make this more attractive for the RAISE grant, we couldn't widen that actual bridge at that point. We're basically, you had to keep the structure footprint. So maybe that answers your first question.
Sort of. I guess I'm just, as a cyclist trying to visualize. I mean, right now I don't ride across there because it's taking their life in your hand trying to get across that bridge right now. It's just always when something is made, better, safer, wider on one direction than the other, the challenge there is usually if you're riding one direction for some reason, you're going to come back the other direction. And what I often see is if one side appears to be wider, safer, whatever, you'll see cyclists sometimes wanting to be safe and riding the wrong direction, right, on the other side, which then causes other problems when you get past the area where that is, and then you're on the wrong side of the road, and that's a safety issue.
Well, maybe I can mention that the intent of this Nancy, would you want to speak?
Yeah, I think Eris, I think the good news is that we're able to at least incorporate a little more low stress enhancement on at least part of the structure. And I think to Chris's point, it was so far along design, it was not, and I'm probably not using the right choice of words, but it was not, we couldn't widen the bridge any longer because the design had gotten so far, at 100%, it would mean a huge impact to the project, right? So I think what we ended up by doing was making that compromise. No, okay, here's the width of the structure, and that's our constraint. So what can we make work as far as developing a low stress bike and ped facility? And so that's where we ended up with just the one side. And then as far as connecting, so Eris, remember too, that this is going to connect, once you get off the structure down to Santa Rosa Avenue, and that, working with Rob and Caltrans to figure out how that would best work at Santa Rosa Avenue for cyclists. That took a little bit of work. And then on the west side, connecting to we're also planning and I don't think I said this in my presentation, but a multi-use path along Hearn Avenue from roughly Corby to the smart multi-use path, right? So we're going to be, working with the property. I think there's one property owner that we have to work with or to get, another multi-use path along that south side of Hearn Avenue, which would align with this, with the structure on the same side. So a little bit of thought went into this, kind of at the last moment, but I think we've put together some good pieces for creating a low stress network that would get you to the multi-use path from at SMART. And then eventually, I did mention the multi-use path that we're planning that would align with Farmers Lane Extension. So, we're trying our best to try to, build in these class 1s or class 4s as best as we can. And I think this is
somebody with a bad connection there. I'm not sure if that was Eris or who, but I couldn't hear that.
That might have been me. I'm not. How does this count as a class 1 when it's alongside the roadway? I'm not seeing how that's separated enough to be called the class 1 rather than a class 4.
Well, I think I'm my multi-use path, right? That's what we're actually calling it here on the exhibit. And there's a 5-foot shoulder and a 5-foot pattern separator. So that's like 10 feet from the travel lane, right? So, I mean, that's a pretty good separation.
Okay. I'm not sure, Eris, if that satisfied your question. I kind of remember somebody, when we heard this a year or two ago, there was some kind of safety reason as how they were going to join up with the other multi-use path that's on the south side rather than the north side, but it may be just me imagining things. Just to keep this moving along, Dennis, did you have a question? Carter?
Yes. The question has to do with the $10 million that originally was used or booked for Measure M as it relates to the Farmers Lane extension. And I know we spent then 400 and whatever it is, a change. So we leaving the 9.5 left. And then you mentioned another $10 million for the Hearn Avenue extension. Was that the same $10 million for Measure M, or is there a separate $10 million that I wasn't aware of for that's sitting around for Measure M for Hearn Avenue?
Mr.
Sean, you want to take that one? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. So there was 10 million identified for Farmers Lane. Actually, I think it's 19 million identified for Farmers Lane, and I have to go back and look at what the programmed amount, the actual identified amount was in the measure, but there was at least that much in Farmers Lane and also in Fulton. And so with those two surpluses, we'll call them surpluses right now, because we also know that Measure M is not going to generate quite as much revenue as we had anticipated in 2004. while it is still growing, we don't anticipate that it's going to make that full estimated value. So we know that there is some unused surplus from both of those projects, and the board took action to commit up to 10 million if the city was successful in identifying other funds through either a raise grant or some other grant program. But it will take action from the board and an amendment of the expenditure plan in order to make those funds available.
So it could be, again, the Farmers Lane surplus that's being used for Hearn Avenue.
It could be, yes. I mean, it
Yeah.
is a surplus. So what we anticipate
Yeah.
happening is at some point, staff is going to take an item to the board and say, these are the projects that have been delivered. These are the projects that have not yet been delivered. This is the amount that we think is still available. Do we want to reallocate some of these funds to other existing projects in the same program, which is allowable under Measure M?
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Great. And we're going to run out of time again, guys. So try to keep the questions as short as possible because we still got a lot of other items on here. Steve Bertlebaugh.
Yes. Do I understand that the multi-use path is going to be a two-way path on the south edge?
That's correct. Currently, that's the design.
Yes.
And then the sidewalk on the north side is also going to be a two-way sidewalk. Is that right?
That's correct. Sidewalk and then a bicycle path next to it.
And
Bicycle
then it'll be a
lane.
one-way bike path on that side.
That's correct.
And is there a one-way bike path class 2 on the south side?
Yep, that is the multi-use path. So it, however direction they'd want to go, a bicycle user could use which direction they choose to go while sharing a path with a pedestrian.
So you just have a shoulder and bicycles would use that as at their risk.
Huh? Don't recommend bicyclists use shoulder. I mean, if they could use a travel lane if they wish to, technically, but again, the multi-use path is there for their use.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Great. Tom?
Thanks. I'll start by following up on that question, which is similar to what Eris was asking. I think this is a simpler way to ask it, though. The design presented for Hearn Avenue is identical to this design that was presented to us last year. Isn't that correct? There was no change to the design, or was the design changed slightly for the raise grant?
I think back then it was more of a concept, and then we worked with Caltrans to get a confirmation if we could do that, and that is what we've got right now. So they're okay with this current design.
Okay, so I think we hashed a lot of these design issues out last year, and this is as good as we're going to get on this design from the bicycle community's perspective. And that's a little frustrating, but we hope to improve on designs and projects going forward. I was curious when the environmental was done. I know Nancy referred to Farmers Lane Extension environmental being dated in the 2004 to 07 period. Isn't that the same period that this environmental was done on Hearn? Or is this newer?
No, I think the Hearn Avenue interchange got its environmental clearance 2017.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I appreciate that. And then you mentioned on the Farmers Lane that there's some right-of-way acquisition, 437,000. I was curious what the current use of that land is and what kind of right-of-way was acquired. Is it just a long strip, or is it something more substantial?
Yeah, Tom, that's a great question. And I don't know. I don't know. I think it's up at the toe of the closer to Bennett Valley Road, but I don't know. But it is just one last parcel that we need. We can, you know, if something that,
yeah, if you can follow up.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think to answer the question, it was more than just a strip for the need for the roadway that we acquired. I think it was all portions of existing properties through the corridor. So I think the acquisition areas were beyond the necessary needs at the time of the alignment.
Right, I guess I'm just thinking about that project being so stalled for so long. You know, what's the current use of that property, and maybe we should be thinking about it a little bit differently than this. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. This is a very active committee, as you guys can see. Everybody has lots of questions and good questions all. Nancy and your crew, thank you guys for coming and speaking to us and sharing the projects. It's exciting. We're one step closer. And thank you guys very much for your presentation.
You're welcome.
We are on to Shauna with maintenance of effort policy 4.14.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the item before you today is whether or not to recommend compliance with the Measure M policy 4.14 and the CPUC requirement for maintenance of effort for our Measure M local streets and roads rehab program. So in 2010, SCTA developed a Measure M policy to comply with the Public Utilities Code that was used, which was used a method of reporting through fiscal year 1920. But then in April of 2017, SB1 passed, and so the state began administering the SB1 funds and reinstated a maintenance of effort policy for the SB1 funds. So we aligned Measure M policy to match up with the SB1 policy for maintenance of effort. So this is the first year that we are reporting solely on the new policy. We had a policy that went 2010 through 2019, and that's done now. So now this is the first time that we're reporting out. So there are a number of principles that apply to this new policy. First, when we brought this, in 2017, when we developed this new policy, we brought it to the TAC, we brought it to the CAC, and we brought it to the board. And there was a robust discussion, and the four principles that everyone felt were important were: one, to have a strict requirement and public transparency to ensure that jurisdictions did not supplant funds. The second was to index the baseline to allow for adjustments that reflect the economy and specifically jurisdictions' discretionary funds. The third was for it to be efficiently administered by using data that the jurisdictions are already reporting to the State Controller's Office for the annual Streets and Roads report. And fourth, to establish a clear compliance and penalty for non-compliance. So as I mentioned, this is the first year that we're reporting solely on the new reporting. And there are three, and so what we do is we've established a 3-year baseline, and that starts in 17-18 and goes through 17-18, 18-19, and 19-20. That's our baseline. We use those numbers and average them out, and that's the baseline. Then we have a 3-year rolling average that we compare to that baseline to ensure whether or not the jurisdictions are in compliance with their maintenance of effort requirement. So this year we have found that there are 3 jurisdictions that are out of compliance with their 3-year with their maintenance of effort requirement, their baseline. And those jurisdictions are Cloverdale, the city of Sonoma, and the county of Sonoma. Now, in your agenda packet, there is a staff report, and there's a table in the staff report that shows how much below that 3-year rolling average each of those jurisdictions has come in. So for the city of Cloverdale, it's 0.77, and I mean, all of them are less than 2% is what it comes down to. So the penalty for non-compliance is for the amount of the percentage below that average to be deducted from the next year's allocation for LSR until the jurisdiction can bring themselves back into compliance. So the staff report is recommending that each of those jurisdictions have that amount reduced from their LSR allocation amount for next year, for fiscal year 22-23. Now, right after we completed all of our staff reports and all of our reporting and all of our, number crunching, the county of Sonoma submitted a letter, which is also in your agenda packet, and it's all the way at the end of all of the forms that I've included. And let me find the page number for you. It's on page 42, I'm sorry, of the staff report. And the county told us, and keep in mind that this is reporting out not on this year, but on year 2021, right? So they do all of their reporting, and then they do their, they finish the fiscal year in June, and then they do their reporting out to the state in December, and then they do their reporting to us in February. So it's been a while, and it's always for the year prior. So the county reported out that because of COVID and COVID protocols that happened, we all know how this hit us, but as COVID protocols hit the county, there were times when, if you lived with someone who tested positive, you couldn't go to work, or if you had tested positive, or you've been exposed to someone who had tested positive, you couldn't go to work. So that really impacted the workforce, and the county uses their LSR funds to fund their maintenance salaries, their maintenance personnel salaries. So they actually had trouble spending their Measure M LSR funds because they didn't have the people to actually do the work. It was difficult to get all those people in and doing work during the COVID lockdown, and then subsequently from the COVID protocols that happened. So the county has requested that SCTA consider waiving all Measure M compliant penalties for the fiscal year 2021. Now, we took this to the TAC, and that idea did not pass. The TAC did recommend by a split decision to recommend the staff recommendation, which was to implement the policy as it stands. So that item is what is before you today. We are asking the Citizens Advisory Committee to also consider recommending the staff recommendation to implement this policy as it stands. With that, I would turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair, for a discussion. And we will need a vote on this.
In the interest of saving time, hopefully, I'll throw a motion out there in a second so that we can get straight into discussion. And I move that we follow the recommendations of staff and TAC, and we keep the teeth in our policy and administer the deduction of the funding allocation to those that were deficient.
I'll second that motion.
And we won't call for the question. We got a couple of hands up. So Tom.
Thank you, Shauna. That was a great report. Just so I'm clear, it sounds as if the county being the most significantly impacted by a penalty here, if they return to the maintenance of effort expected funding level, will the penalty essentially be reimbursed to them, or does the penalty persist as a long-term deduction from their LSR?
As the policy stands now, the deduction is made and then redistributed amongst the compliant jurisdictions.
Thank you. So
and
it's a
the jurisdiction does not get it back.
So this is a one-time hit to the county of about, I think I saw $50,000 roughly.
That's right.
Thank you.
And that's an estimate based on what we expect their allocation to be, because we have to base it on revenues, and revenues aren't here yet. But that's what we expect it to be.
Great questions. Steve.
So my understanding is that the total amount of all of these penalties is something under $60,000. Is that right?
That's correct.
Not a very significant amount. So I'm comfortable just sticking with this. The one thing that crossed my mind was that due to the pandemic situation, one might want to say, you lose this money unless you can reestablish all that and accomplish a greater effort in the next year.
Well,
but for this amount of money, I don't think we should mess around with that.
Yeah, the policy states that it will stay in place until the jurisdiction is brought back into compliance. But I mean, to be fair, the county is only 1.86% below their maintenance of effort requirement. So it's not going to be hard for them to come back into compliance.
Rick?
Thank you. I'm not clear what the alternative is to this motion. If we voted it down, what would that mean?
I think we entertain another motion to go against the recommendation of staff and the TAC to waive the irregularities or the deficiencies on a one-time basis.
Or to waive, the county has requested that we waive the penalty. So, and that would be countywide. So it would apply to all 3 jurisdictions who are out of compliance.
I don't know what a TAC is, but is that controlling? I mean, is that an organization or an entity that has said this can't happen?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear all of that, Mr.
The TAC is a technical advisory committee.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. The TAC is the technical advisory committee made up of planning directors, public works directors, and transit operators. Generally, it is mostly attended by public works directors.
Did they say anything about why they were opposed to this waiver?
Well, only half of them, they weren't opposed, they just recommended the staff recommendation. They supported the staff recommendation. The other half were concerned of setting precedent, of having COVID, penalty, with special circumstances, instigating penalties when things were extreme. But there was not an alternative forwarded by the TAC. There was one motion and one vote. So there was nothing else offered, and no one else stood up, even though they did have a robust discussion. Okay, so the recommendation was supported.
I guess my feeling is then that we all know that this pandemic is a reality that has ended everything. We're being told that staff wasn't even available because of the pandemic. It seems to me that let's put it this way, that the county has a valid excuse. So I guess I would be opposed to this motion.
Harris?
Yeah, I do understand, the challenges with staffing during this whole time. I myself have had issues with that myself. However, I think if they're, when we make a policy and then just override it all the time, then what's the point of having a policy, right? If there were many more jurisdictions and they were all having the same very large problem with this, then I would entertain a conversation about, okay, this has been a really strange time. Does that make sense? But because it's a small number of our total jurisdictions and the amounts are so small, I don't see any reason to waive the penalty in this case.
Thank you. Brian?
Is there a precedence in that? Have we done this before, or have the same entities had the similar problems before, or is this kind of first time?
Well, this is the first time because it's the first time implementing the new policy. We did have a previous policy that took the county in aggregate so that it wasn't an individual penalty. It was as long as the county on its entirety was in compliance, then we counted it as in compliance, even though we had individual jurisdictions that might not have made their maintenance of effort baseline previously, which was one of the reasons why the Citizens Advisory Committee, when we made this policy, wanted to make sure that there was some sort of consequence for not making your maintenance of effort requirement on an individual jurisdiction basis.
Thank you.
Sure.
Seeing no other hands raised for comment, let's call for the question. And I guess, well, let's try with a hand vote first, and then we can go to the other. All those in favor of the motion that supports the TAC and staff recommendation, give us a thumbs up. And Shauna, will you count for me? Or somebody?
Give me a second. I'm writing down who's.
Thank you.
It looks like we have 10 yays, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And all those that oppose?
I see 1.
Okay. Thank you guys for the discussion and the opinion and the really nice report, Shauna. That's a complicated MOE, and I'm happy with the outcome.
Thank you.
So anyways, thank you. The motion passes. What are we on? Strategic plan programming, City of Petaluma's access across Highway 101.
That's me as well, Mr. Chair. I will try to make this brief. So SCTA did a programming exercise last year where we programmed funding for the updated strategic plan. The strategic plan is not yet complete. We expect to have that done by June. It got delayed for various reasons. But we had already taken the programming for the strategic plan to the board last year. In the interim, the City of Petaluma has come to us, so it didn't happen when we did the call for programming for that previous action. But in the interim, the City of Petaluma has come to SCTA and said, we'd really like to do a feasibility study. There is a Measure M project known as Access Across 101, which has approximately $250,000 for up to 4 jurisdictions to do a feasibility study about bicycle and pedestrian access across the highway for any of the jurisdictions that are located across or along Highway 101. So Petaluma is eligible for these funds, although it is outside of the cycle of programming. Staff is recommending that the CAC consider approving or recommending supporting the staff recommendation to program these funds outside of the regular programming cycle. The City of Petaluma is planning a feasibility study. They have a couple of different locations under consideration. They have already experienced a death along the Corona Road overcrossing, and they have a deficient facility near the Kenilworth, the former Kenilworth Middle School location. And so they would like to complete a feasibility study. So they are applying for our consideration of the last $250,000 available in this Measure M project for completing a feasibility study. With that, I would turn it over to you.
Would that cut out other jurisdictions that might be just as entitled
So
if we go along with this?
So the project is identified, the project is listed as, let's see, I believe I put it into.
In other words, should we put a limit on how much of that dollars gets applicable to Petaluma's request?
The project itself is for up to 4 jurisdictions, $250,000 each. 3 jurisdictions have already taken advantage of that: the City of Rohnert Park, the City of Santa Rosa, and the Town of Windsor. So there is one $250,000 allocation left under this project. It is available to any jurisdiction that is still located along 101 that still hasn't used it, and Petaluma is one of those jurisdictions.
Thank you. So again, in the interest of time, I'll make the motion. Hopefully there's a second and we can get into further discussion and then vote. So I move that we follow the lead and the recommendation of staff.
I'll second that.
Approve this. And Rick, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, so it sounds like the staff and this committee are not willing to cut slack for the county of Sonoma for being out of compliance with a policy. But the staff is willing to cut Petaluma some slack for not moving on their application in the proper timeframe. Do I understand correctly?
Yes, that is accurate.
Okay. So we'll call for the question. All those in favor signify by a thumbs up or a hand raised.
I have 9 yays, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and those in opposition
I'm
to the motion?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, and then abstentions.
1
Thank you.
abstention from Mr. Lemon.
Okay, motion carries.
Question, Kathleen, was your hand up for the abstention as well?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
2 abstentions.
Two
My
abstentions. Okay, great. Thank you, guys. And James, you're up on vacation for financial statement.
If you know the latest revenue, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Seeing no hands raised, that is the shortest financial statement presentation in the history of this august group. Thank you, James. And moving on to the SCTA RCPA equity statement, Suzanne Smith.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the group. So included in the agenda packet was a staff report and a draft equity statement. And so this has come about as we have been sort of diving into staff trainings and sort of, I don't know, personal betterment as it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the observation that a number of public agencies have put forward what we're calling an equity statement that is just that sort of a principle that the agency would abide by in our work. So the draft equity statement was developed in consultation with some diversity, equity, and inclusion consultants, as well as your SCTA and RCPA management staff. Our process is that we would like your thoughts or input on the statement. And we will also be meeting with a number of other community groups, and then we will take it to the SCTA RCPA board at their May meeting. So this is an opportunity to provide feedback or give us your thoughts on the draft statement. Should you have any?
I do. I'm just wondering, and the reason why I keep asking for the backgrounder about the membership is I feel that the SCTA is lacking very much representation from marginalized groups. So I don't really know what this committee does, but transportation tax, I believe, which is what Measure M is, should be inclusive, in the Citizens Advisory Group should be inclusive of citizens. And I know that at least twice on the TPCC committee, I have asked about representation for the vacant slot here on this committee. And a lovely disabled woman has volunteered twice to be that representative. However, SCTA staff has not yet agendized that item to elect somebody to represent here on this committee. And so I think I find your equity statement lacking. I think that when you are talking about communities of color and low income as being disproportionately impacted by economic inequities, I think being transportation, you really should include people with disabilities in that definition. That sounds to me like a more racial equity definition that you have when you're talking about race and ethnic background. You're not including seniors, people with disabilities, LGBTQ, you know, there's more marginalized groups than just racial and, you know, their ethnic backgrounds is what my comments would be.
All right, thank you.
Suzanne, are you looking for action on this? A motion and a second, or just discussion?
No, just discussion and comments so that we can incorporate that in our report out to the board.
Eris Weaver?
Yeah, just to kind of tag on with Kathleen, you know, writing statements is a good thing, and then it's how far are you willing to go to actually implement the changes, because I mean, all the organizations that we're all part of are all doing this right now, which is a good thing, which is progress, but takes a lot of work. I guess my other question is, as a member of some other, shall we say, communities that experience discrimination, it looks like you're very specifically wording it to focus on, you know, racism and economic disparities, and not any of the other other issues, right? Other kinds of diversity and discrimination. So I don't know. I would kind of like to see something about that. For example, there's lots of good studies now about differences, gender differences in dealing with transportation because of safety and schlepping kids, and we still have an economic disparity between men's and women's wages, and all of this stuff plays out. You know, there's so many things out there. So I think making a step towards doing something is a good thing, but I guess I'm just wondering about being that specific to that narrow of a definition of the diversity that you're in, equity that you're concerned about. Did that make sense?
Yep, did to me. Thank you. Rick?
I just wanted to associate myself with Kathleen's remarks. I think racial inequity is obviously a very significant problem in our culture, but if we're going to talk about equity, we really need to talk about the broadest view. Gender, sexual orientation, age, disability, and so on. These are all areas in which there are inequities, and I think the policy should make it very clear that it's addressed broadly toward equity concerns.
Thank you, Rick. Steve?
Well, the problem that this group has is that the appointments are made by a large number of organizations and by members of the Board of Supervisors. And it's really hard for anybody to say, well, we've checked this block, we need to check that one. I would recommend that anyone who feels there's a group that is not properly recommended or properly represented, they go find a person who will fill that role and then find the vacancy. We've got a few, and let's take care of it. That's my thinking.
Very pragmatic, Steve. Thank you. Dana?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to respond to Kathleen's comment about the TPCC appointment to the CAC. Our TPCC membership has been slowly going down over the last year or two. And last month, we actually appointed 3 new members to the committee. And so we wanted to give a chance for new members to also be considered for appointment to represent the TPCC on the CAC committee. And we've also been encouraging members of the TPCC to join a CAC meeting and see kind of what it's all about and to see if they're interested. So we will be bringing this to the TPCC, which is the Transit Paratransit Coordinating Committee that Kathleen was referring to, and she sits on as well. So we'll be bringing that to the next meeting in May. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Suzanne, I think you have your discussion points.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Drew, you're up with the draft of agenda. Can I make one suggestion, Drew, as you're coming in here, since I'm sorely unable to keep us on time, I might suggest, and I think it's because it's all explainable. This is a very active committee and people are passionate about this. And I don't want to be put in a position where I'm cutting people off. So I'm going to make a suggestion when we go forth with the next agenda in the future. And that is we make it 4 o'clock to 5:45 instead of 5:30. But I know this is a different agenda that we're talking about, but I wanted to get that in before the end, before people check out. So. All right, Drew, you're up. Thank you.
So here's the draft SCTA or RCPA board agenda for April 11. The agenda items, Suzanne, I don't know if you wanted.
Well, yeah, this is revised. This needs to be revised because we actually are moving the meeting to 5:30. As opposed to the regularly scheduled 2:30 meeting, and there's going to be just some consent calendar items. We won't have the equity statement on until May, and the coordinated claim will be on the consent calendar. And then we're going to spend the bulk of the meeting time starting at 5:30 on the call to action for our Sonoma climate mobilization strategy and a focus on climate change. So the agenda will look different than what was included in your packet. That decision was made fairly recently, before or after your agenda packet was mailed. And that's it.
All right. Thank you very much. And any announcements? Eris had a question on there. What is TPCC?
Oh, it got answered. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Steve.
I just want to commend the staff for having this program that's coming up. I'm looking forward to really starting to dig into the climate issues. Thanks.
Yeah, we are kind of blessed with a good staff, and I'm not just, you guys do a great job. Suzanne, good job. Drew, Shauna, everybody. That's all we have, unless, Tom had something. Thank you. Sorry.
I just quickly wanted to draw folks' attention to SB 922, Scott Wiener's bill, which would remove CEQA exemptions for, it would exempt CEQA for transit projects and bike and ped projects. It would extend the date and it would make a few little changes. And I just wanted to think through the implications that might have on Highway 37. We know Highway 37 is anticipating an additional lane that would be either for high occupancy and or transit. And I just was curious what the impact of that bill might be on Highway 37. So maybe that we can talk about that at another meeting or offline. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And that's it. It's a wrap. Thank you, guys. And we'll see you next month.